What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's Cryptocopia Live AMA. Today, we are joined by COO and founder of Ankr, Ryan Fang. Ankr is a distributed cloud computing project that's taking on the likes of Microsoft Azure and Amazon AWS using blockchain technology. So without further ado, Ryan, I just wanted to know, how are you doing today? How are things on your end?
Good, very good.
Yeah.
The company's been working hard. It's been quite the year. I mean, in terms of market, in terms of what's happening in the space, in terms of internally, we've been evolving and progressing.
So could you actually tell us just a little bit about how you met, Chandler and the other founders, and how you all started working on Ankr together?
Chandler and I, we were college roommates for 4 years. So Chandler is the developer. First came up with this idea back in 2014. When I first met Chandler, he's like the second or third person I met when I come to Berkeley. He was like, oh, do you want to buy some of this Bitcoin? And I'm like, I'm not too sure what it is. I did bought 20 Bitcoin. That was back when Bitcoin was $492. We clearly remember the number, $492. I think he bought like 5. But that's actually our sort of seed money, ourselves, how we get started. Ourselves, we were able to, in the beginning, hire some outside people to kind of work with us together. And obviously later on, we see venture funding led by Pantera, DHVC, New Global Capital. Those are our 3 main investors. And Stanley, our CTO, was actually Chandler's super manager when Chandler was working at Amazon AWS. He was sort of a manager's manager of Chandler, but I guess Chandler did a good job whenever he was there. Stanley was one of the first 20 people in AWS. So he sort of witnessed the whole growth of cloud since 2007, 2006 even. And he also led the Alexa project, Alexa ranking, all of this stuff. So he was also the sort of lead on that. We sort of convinced him to quit his job to start this journey with us. We clearly know that we are quite young. Chandler and I were young. So we try pretty hard to get more experienced guys like Song Liu, like Como, people who've been, in the security space, in the computing IoT space for a long time. And I guess the inspiration of starting Ankr is that I was a stats student, and there was a month I spent $2,000 on AWS. It's actually quite ridiculous for a college student. I always thought, this is kind of too expensive. Cloud computing really has been a very, very lucrative space in terms of multiples. That's why we kind of think, maybe this piece of technology can really revolutionize the cloud space. And that's why we did start to do research into it. Later on, we were able to get more support from more developers, from more venture funds. That's how Ankr started and how we've been growing to today.
Okay. So as I guess a newer company to not necessarily crypto, because I feel like a crypto year is, at least 5 years in the traditional market. I was wondering how you plan to compete directly eventually with AWS and Azure. They're incredibly well funded and very popular platforms. If you're offering something similar, but with a new technology stack and with a very different approach, how did you plan on competing with them and bringing something new to market, but marketing that very differently than the space that they're currently in?
We try to make it as similar of a user experience to the traditional public cloud as possible, so that it is easier for people who've been familiar with the public cloud to use it. Right, that's A. And B is that because we are leveraging idle resources that's contributed by data centers or personal devices, so we actually can achieve a cheaper rate compared to public clouds. Because the idea is for a lot of the servers, about 70% is sitting idle actually. The utilization rate is only usually about 25 to 30%. For example, let's say Intuit, their utilization rate probably is at 90% on April 15 when everybody filed taxes, but today or tomorrow it's like 5%. We use a lot of those resources so that the price is actually cheaper. And the third thing is that we try to make it as intuitive as possible For example, right now, if you use AWS to deploy I don't know, your new website, it still takes a couple of hours. And we try to make that as intuitive as possible, because we're not focusing on, as I mentioned earlier, all tasks. We're sort of focusing on the things that we think make sense for us to do as of now.
I mean, would you say that the majority of data is expected to come from data centers and not from individual users, or do you see more of a focus on sort of a peer-to-peer model?
If I tell you, okay, you can contribute your computing power, today, tomorrow, every day at night, and you get $5 or like a couple bucks a day, right? Would you really do it? Like some people do it, right? Like honestly, some people do it, but a lot of people won't, right? But the incentive model is entirely different for, let's say, a tech company, a large tech company. It sort of overplanned it, which is almost like 80% of them overplanned it. They have like more than 80% of servers sitting idle day to day. That's
Okay.
a big pressure on their income statements. It's sunk cost anyways, right? You paid it, you cannot really fire sale it. We've seen that company fire sale their data centers are just not doing that great. It's like $500 on maybe a couple $1,000, right? It's not great to sort of cheap sell it. So they've got more pressure and they've got more incentive to actually be part of the network, and that's what we found out after talking to a lot of companies.
Okay. Do you have a rough idea of what the economics might look like for a user? Especially if we're talking about a data center, is there any kind of rough measurement of what the payout might look like someday?
With certain tasks, with more specific, compute-heavy tasks, we're looking at a 40% reduction in terms of price when they compare to AWS of the world. But what we are able to do is essentially getting all those $80 of resources and bundle them together and make it as intuitive, as simple to use as AWS, and sell it to whoever needs it. Whoever is having those idle servers makes money. They're gonna have less of a sort of eager of the profit compared to Amazon, because there's a lot of human capital in public cloud, which in our model is kind of negligible, and that's how the economics work.
Like logistically speaking, I'm just thinking about how tasks might be split up. So if let's take study at home for example, if a radio wave is being analyzed, that's not going to be analyzed by one computer, and especially if we're talking about enterprise users, both on the supply and the demand side, hypothetically, then there are going to be really large tasks that need to be accomplished. So what I'm wondering is how logistically does a task get split up? Like, is that you know, um, being broken into a certain number of parts based on an algorithm, and how is that assigned to however many users are on the platform? Is there a portion of users that are waiting for open tasks? What might that look like?
Usually, people who need the task be done, split up the task themselves. Even if you use AWS, Azure, you likely kind of do that yourself. And we're obviously trying to provide a very intuitive way or very intuitive user experience whoever is using it. Basically, as of now, we use a lot of Kubernetes and container stuff. Basically, you need to putting everything in like a Docker image. So that's how you do it. Yeah.
Well, hey, let's open it up to questions from the community. I think we have had enough from me. Let's open it up to Disco Jim. I don't really understand how the consensus algorithm works. Could you explain that a bit? I believe it's called proof of useful work.
The idea is, we use trusted execution environment, basically acting as validator or like monitor how many times your CPU, how many times is the CPU instruction have done over the last, let's say 1 minute or 2 minutes, right? And trusted execution environments, they are somewhat where we put the trust. A lot of people don't agree with it. People argue about it. People say, oh, isn't that you kind of believe in Intel or believe in NVIDIA or believe in whoever is building it? But we just think right now it is a good and efficient solution. a way to do it. It is a piece of hardware that even, let's say, Intel cannot really, touch it or sort of figuring out what's going on inside. That's basically the core idea of this consensus mechanism.
Okay, and that's the enclave environment, the SDX.
Yep, exactly.
Got it. Squidbox, guys, your names are incredible. Squidbox wants to know what the next major achievement for Ankr is after the mainnet has launched.
Yeah, so I think, first of all, we've already been very actively testing out, our platform, getting more suppliers on board. I think the next major step is getting more people to actually use it. So we will actually roll out a big incentive program, most likely in the form of like airdrop for people who actually use it, who actually want to use it, because it's almost like, let's say, Airbnb give out coupon for people to try out living in other people's space. That's something similar that we will roll out in the next several months. This is sort of a preview. We definitely would love to have more companies, to try it out, in the beginning free. Like, I cannot expect a company starting to use Ankr service from day one and just go on exchange, buy some coins and use it. That's not gonna be how it would work. I think there's a lot of the personal sort of business sales type of conversation going on, and we in the beginning we need to give them some coins for free, so they can try it out, and obviously later on when they sort of got hooked on our service, like the intuitive experience, like the cheaper price, from then on, actually buy the coins on the exchanges and just use it themselves.
Okay, well, Ryan, that's all we have for you. Listen, I just wanted to thank you again, and we will be following closely what you all are up to. Take care, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you. Pleasure.